Running was my only option. His alpha scent still clung to my skin, a cruel reminder of the night that ruined everything. If Nathaniel found out about the life growing inside me, he wouldn't just destroy my company, he would force a rejection, killing my soul to protect his empire. Blood pounded in my ears as I stared at the faint pink lines on the plastic stick, the sterile white lights of my penthouse bathroom, blinding me to the reality of my situation. Oliver Hayes, founder and CEO of Hayes Architectural Design, was pregnant, and the father was the one man who wanted me utterly destroyed, Nathaniel Harrington. Our rivalry was legendary in Manhattan's cutthroat real estate development sector. Harrington Enterprises was a behemoth, a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate that swallowed smaller firms whole. Nathaniel, a dominant alpha with a reputation as cold and unforgiving as the steel skeletons of his skyscrapers, had made it his personal mission to crush my firm. We had been locked in a vicious bidding war for the Vanguard Tower project, a multi-billion-dollar government contract that would define the city's skyline for a century. We fought in boardrooms through hostile press leaks and at elite society galas. I hated his arrogance. I hated the way he looked at me, a male Omega who had dared to refuse the traditional submissive path dictated by our biology. But most of all, I hated the way his scent, a devastating, intoxicating blend of petrichor sharp cedar and ozone, made my suppressed instincts claw at the walls of my chest. The mistake happened 3 weeks ago, at the Waldorf Astoria's annual charity gala. I had spent thousands on the highest-grade experimental suppressants manufactured by a private pharmaceutical lab in Switzerland. They were supposed to guarantee my heat wouldn't break through, allowing me to stand toe-to-toe with alphas without submitting to their pheromonal pressure. But the stress of the Vanguard bid, combined with a bad reaction to the medication, caused a sudden, catastrophic failure. One moment I was sipping champagne and charming the city's mayor. The next a fever spiked so violently my vision blurred. The unmistakable sweet scent of white tea and blooming vanilla. My natural Omega pheromones began to leak, cutting through the heavy colognes of the ballroom. I panicked and fled toward the private VIP suites on the upper floors to lock myself away until my driver could extract me. I didn't realize Nathaniel had followed me. When he backed me into the mahogany doors of Suite 402, there was no corporate rivalry left in his eyes. The scent of a dominant alpha in close proximity to an Omega, dropping into a sudden heat, triggered an ancient, unbreakable biological circuit. He didn't ask for my portfolio. He didn't mock my architectural designs. He just devoured me. We tore at each other with years of repressed hatred and undeniable terrifying attraction. In the dark, tangled in the silk sheets of that hotel bed, he bit down on my scent gland, leaving a temporary but agonizingly deep claiming mark. The morning after was a masterclass in cruelty. I woke up alone, my body aching and my neck bruised. Sitting on the nightstand was a crisp-typed non-disclosure agreement from his legal team at Wachtel Lipton alongside a blank check. A handwritten note on Harrington Enterprises stationery read, "A biological glitch. Clean up your mess, Hayes. The Vanguard project is mine." He didn't care. He treated our primal connection as a liability to be paid off. I signed nothing, tore up the check, and threw myself back into work, masking my scent gland with heavy concealer and scent-blocking off patches. Then came the nausea, the fatigue, the terrifying realization that my suppressants hadn't just failed to stop my heat, they had failed to stop my fertility. I booked a covert appointment with Dr. Elias Kensington at Street, Jude's private medical pavilion on the Upper East Side. Dr. Kensington was a renowned specialist in high-risk Omega pregnancies, operating under strict patient-doctor confidentiality for the city's elite. As he ran the ultrasound wand over my flat stomach, the silence in the room was deafening. "You're 8 weeks along, Mr. Hayes," Dr. Kensington murmured, pointing to a tiny pulsing cluster of pixels on the monitor. A strong heartbeat. However, given your history of suppressant abuse, your hormone levels are volatile. You need your alpha's pheromones to stabilize the pregnancy. Without a proper bond, the pup and you are at severe risk. I felt the blood drain from my face. That's not an option, Elias. Oliver, if you don't bond, your body will slowly reject the fetus. And if the alpha discovers this and forces a conscious rejection, breaking the temporary mark he left on you, the neurological shock could be fatal. You know the Omegaverse laws. He has the right to demand a rejection to protect his lineage. The horror of my reality set in. Nathaniel was ruthless. Just yesterday, the Wall Street Journal leaked that Harrington Enterprises was finalizing a merger with DuPont Shipping, secured by an arranged high society bonding between Nathaniel and Gabriel DuPont, a pristine, purebred French Omega. If Nathaniel found out about my pregnancy, it would be a PR nightmare that could ruin his merger. He wouldn't just take the Vanguard project from me. He would drag me into a private arbitration court. He would use his immense wealth and legal power to force a rejection, severing our biological tie, effectively killing my child, and leaving me a broken, hollowed-out shell of an Omega. That afternoon, my worst fears were confirmed. My head of security intercepted a digital footprint. Kroll Associates, a high-end corporate espionage and private investigation firm on Nathaniel's payroll, had pinged my medical records at St. Jude's. The firewall held, but it was only a matter of time. Nathaniel suspected something. His scent had lingered on me too long. His alpha instincts were whispering to him, driving him to investigate my sudden doctor visits. I touched my stomach, feeling the faint, warm flutter of life. I had spent my entire life building my firm, fighting for respect in an alpha-dominated world. But I realized in that cold, sterile bathroom that my company, my wealth, and my pride meant nothing compared to the tiny heartbeat on that ultrasound monitor. I couldn't fight Nathaniel Harrington in court. I couldn't beat his billions. But I could disappear. I could make sure Oliver Hayes ceased to exist. Planning your own funeral is a surreal, methodical nightmare. Every second that ticked by felt like Nathaniel's breath on the back of my neck. My temporary mark ached a phantom pain, warning me that the alpha who had claimed me was hunting. To fake my death, I needed someone entirely off the grid. I couldn't use any of my corporate fixes. Through a dark web intermediary I had previously used to scrub false press rumors, I found Richard Miller, an ex-intelligence contractor who specialized in ghosting high-value targets. We met at a dingy fluorescent-lit diner in Queens. Miller was a quiet, unassuming man in a faded trench coat, eating cherry pie with surgical precision. I slid a heavy canvas duffel bag under the table. Inside was $2 million in untraceable liquidated bearer bonds, and a ledger for offshore accounts in Cayman National. I need to vanish, I said, keeping my voice low. Completely. Not a single loose end. No dental records, no DNA, no ashes. Miller didn't look up from his pie. Who's looking for you? Nathaniel Harrington. Miller's fork paused. A heavy silence settled over the vinyl booth. Harrington, you're playing with fire, kid. If he finds out I helped you, I'm dead, and so are you. He finally looked at me, his eyes dropping to the scent patch on my neck. You're carrying his pup. That's why you're running. Can you do it or not? I demanded, my protective Omega instincts making me bare my teeth slightly. I can, Miller said softly. "But you have to leave everything. Your money, your name, your legacy. Oliver Hayes dies this Friday." The plan was brutal, but flawless. I spent the next 3 days setting my affairs in order. I signed the Vanguard Tower bid over to my loyal vice president, ensuring my employees would survive my sudden departure. I packed a single small bag. I left my Rolex, my tailored Tom Ford suits, and my custom-built Manhattan penthouse behind. Friday night brought a torrential downpour, the kind of storm that swallows the California coastline whole. I had flown commercial under a fake ID to San Francisco, renting a heavy SUV. Miller's instructions were exact. I drove down the treacherous winding roads of the Pacific Coast Highway near Big Sur. The rain lashed against the windshield, the wipers struggling to clear the deluge. The ocean roared hundreds of feet below the cliffs, a black, hungry abyss. My heart hammered against my ribs. Every bump in the road made me clutch my stomach protectively. "We're going to be okay," I whispered to the empty car, projecting as much calm as I could through our fragile biological bond. At mile marker 42, a secluded stretch with a notoriously sharp curve and a history of fatal drop-offs. I saw the twin flashes of Miller's headlights. I pulled over onto the muddy shoulder. Miller was waiting in the pouring rain next to a flatbed truck. On the back of the truck was an exact replica of my rental SUV. "We don't have much time," Miller shouted over the roaring wind and crashing waves. "Highway Patrol does a sweep every 2 hours. He dragged a heavy canvas-wrapped figure from his truck, a John Doe from a city morgue, someone roughly my height and build, whose dental records Miller had hacked and swapped with mine in the state database. He placed the body in the driver's seat of the replica SUV. "Are you ready?" Miller asked, holding a remote detonator. I looked at the replica car. Inside was a man wearing my clothes, my watch. Once that car went over the cliff and burned, Oliver Hayes was gone forever. There was no coming back. Harrington Enterprises would win. Nathaniel would marry his French Omega. And I would be a ghost. "Do it," I breathed, turning my face away from the rain. Miller shifted the replica SUV into drive, wedged a heavy brace against the accelerator, and slammed the door. We watched as the heavy vehicle surged forward, tearing through the flimsy steel guardrail and launched into the black void. Seconds later, a massive fireball erupted from the rocks below, illuminating the violent crashing waves in harsh orange light. The explosion shook the ground beneath my feet. It was done. I was dead. Miller tossed me a heavy manila envelope. "Your new life. You're Leo Collins now. Canadian citizen, freelance graphic designer. There's a cabin waiting for you in a secluded town in the Pacific Northwest. Cash, new ID, new social. Don't ever look back." By Monday morning, I was sitting by a wood-burning stove in a rustic, isolated cabin in the dense forests of Oregon. Outside, massive pine trees swayed in the cold wind. I held a mug of decaf tea, my hands shaking, as I opened my encrypted laptop and pulled up the CNN homepage. The headline dominated the screen: "Architectural visionary Oliver Hayes killed in fiery Pacific Coast crash. Foul play ruled out." I clicked on the press conference video. Nathaniel Harrington stood at a podium in front of his corporate headquarters. He looked immaculate, wearing a sharp charcoal suit. His face was an unreadable mask of stone. The passing of Oliver Hayes is a tragedy for the architectural community, Nathaniel said to the flashes of the press cameras, his voice smooth and terrifyingly devoid of emotion. Despite our professional rivalry, I respected his drive. My condolences to his team. Harrington Enterprises will be moving forward with the Vanguard project. He didn't care. He didn't shed a tear. He had won. tears finally spilled hot down my cheeks. I closed the laptop, severing my last tie to the world I knew. I wrapped my arms around my stomach, closing my eyes, as the phantom ache in my scent gland pulsed one final time before fading into a dull throb. I had survived. I had protected my pup from the monster who sired them. But deep down, a primal, terrifying instinct whispered in the dark. An alpha always knows when his omega is truly gone. And Nathaniel Harrington didn't look like a man who believed a ghost story. 6 months of living as Leo Collins felt like existing underwater. The secluded coastal town of Cannon Beach, Oregon, offered a gray, rain-soaked anonymity that perfectly matched my hollowed-out soul. I traded bespoke tailoring for heavy flannel and waterproof boots, my days spent rendering anonymous freelance blueprints for mid-level developers, while my belly swelled with the undeniable reality of Nathaniel's child. The physical toll of carrying a dominant alpha's pup without the biological support of the sire's pheromones was agonizing. My joints ached, my temperature fluctuated violently, and the phantom pain in my scent gland where Nathaniel had bitten me throbbed incessantly. Dr. Kensington's warning haunted my sleepless nights. My body was under immense stress, fighting to maintain a pregnancy that nature dictated required a bonded pair. To survive, I had to rely on dangerous underground medical interventions. I couldn't risk walking into Providence Seaside Hospital. Instead, I sourced a highly regulated synthetic alpha pheromone compound originally developed by Novartis for military omegas suffering from bond severance trauma. It was illegal to procure without a federal prescription, requiring me to dip back into the dark web. I paid exorbitant fees using cryptocurrency, having the vials shipped to a blind P.O. box under a shell company's name. It was a desperate, precarious existence, but every time I felt a sharp kick against my ribs, a fierce protective warmth flooded my chest. I was keeping them safe. I was winning. Or so I thought. The first crack in my perfect illusion appeared during a freezing November morning. I was nursing a cup of bone broth, staring at the local news on my battered television, when the broadcast cut to a national financial update. The screen displayed a live feed from Wall Street. Nathaniel Harrington was stepping out of a black Maybach, surrounded by a swarm of reporters. He looked terrible. The pristine, unshakable CEO was gone. His jaw was covered in harsh stubble, his eyes sunken and rimmed with exhausted shadows. He wore a rumpled overcoat, ignoring the frantic questions about Harrington Enterprises' plummeting stock prices. The banner scrolling at the bottom of the screen made my blood run cold. Harrington/DuPont mega merger collapses. CEO Nathaniel Harrington calls off arranged bonding. My mug slipped from my trembling hands, shattering against the hardwood floor. Hot broth splashed against my ankles, but I couldn't feel it. Why would he cancel the merger? It was the crown jewel of his empire. It was the reason I had to die, so he could bond with Gabriel DuPont and secure his dynasty without the scandal of a bastard pup with his greatest rival. Panic, sharp and blinding, clawed at my throat. I rushed to my encrypted laptop, firing up the secure Tor browser. I needed to know what had happened. I dug through heavily redacted financial forums and corporate gossip columns. The rumors were terrifying. Whispers claimed Nathaniel had gone feral shortly after my death. He had physically assaulted a Kroll investigator, fired his entire legal team, and poured hundreds of millions of dollars into a shadow investigation using Palantir Technologies' data mining software. He wasn't mourning a rival. He was hunting a ghost. I made a fatal mistake in my panic. My hands shaking, I logged into the dark web portal to check the tracking on my latest shipment of Novartis synthetic pheromones. I needed to ensure it was arriving today. My supply was completely dry, and the cramping in my lower abdomen was worsening by the hour. What I didn't know was that Nathaniel hadn't just bought data mining software. He had purchased the dark web intermediary nodes routing pharmaceutical traffic in the Pacific Northwest. The tracking page loaded slowly. Then, instead of a delivery confirmation, a single line of text appeared on the black screen. "I found you." The laptop battery instantly died, plunging the screen into darkness. I stumbled backward, clutching my stomach. My Omega instincts screamed a primal siren warning me of imminent, inescapable danger. I had to run. I needed to grab my emergency cash, get to my truck and drive into the mountains. I threw open my bedroom closet, pulling down the canvas duffel bag. But as I turned toward the hallway, a sound froze the blood in my veins. The heavy crunch of tires on the gravel driveway. Multiple vehicles. I crept toward the living room window, peering through the rain-streaked glass. 3 black armored SUVs had blocked the narrow dirt road leading to my cabin. Men in tactical gear bearing no insignias stepped out into the downpour, forming a silent perimeter into the tree line. Then the door of the lead SUV opened. The air in my living room suddenly shifted. Even through the heavy wooden door and the howling wind, it hit me like a physical blow. Petrichor, sharp cedar, the ozone crackle of a lightning strike. His scent, it was suffocating thick with a volatile mix of pure rage, desperate grief, and overwhelming alpha dominance. My knees buckled, my biology betraying my mind as my body instantly recognized its claimant. Nathaniel stepped into the rain. He didn't wear a jacket. He just stood there staring at the front door of my cabin with eyes that burned like black ice. He raised a hand, and his mercenaries stepped back, giving him a wide berth. He was coming for his Omega, and there was nowhere left to run. Wood splintered violently as the front door was kicked open, the rusted deadbolt snapping like a twig. The freezing coastal wind howled into my living room, carrying a tidal wave of Nathaniel's pheromones. I was backed against the stone fireplace, one hand gripping a heavy iron poker, the other wrapped fiercely around my swollen belly. Nathaniel stepped over the threshold, his chest heaving. Rain dripped from his dark hair, trailing down the sharp angles of his jaw. He looked like a god of war, brutal, unyielding, and entirely unhinged. His eyes locked onto mine, and the silence that stretched between us was heavier than the ocean. Then his gaze dropped. He saw the oversized flannel shirt clinging to the undeniable curve of my 7-month pregnancy. A ragged, tearing sound escaped his throat. It wasn't a word. It was the raw, broken noise of an alpha witnessing the impossible. The oppressive anger in his scent vanished instantly, replaced by a devastating wave of absolute terror and profound relief. "Oliver," he breathed, taking a slow, trembling step forward. "Don't come any closer," I snarled, raising the iron poker. My Omega instincts were at war, half of me wanting to bare my throat to him, the other half ready to tear out his jugular to protect my pup. "You stay the hell away from us. I am legally dead. You have no jurisdiction here. You have no rights." He ignored the weapon, stepping into striking distance. "Do you have any idea," he whispered, his voice cracking, "what the last 6 months have been? The moment that car went over the cliff, the temporary mark you carried snapped. I felt it, Oliver. I felt my soul tear in half. I didn't care about the Vanguard project. I didn't care about the merger. I dug through the ashes of that wreckage with my bare hands. Liar! I screamed, tears finally spilling hot and fast down my cheeks. You left a check and an ND. You told me to clean up my mess. You were going to force a rejection to marry Gabriel DuPont. Nathaniel stopped, his face twisting in genuine confusion and horror. What, Oliver? What are you talking about? I heard the rumors, I saw the Wall Street Journal leak. You were securing the DuPont merger with an arranged bonding. If you knew I was pregnant, your board would have demanded a rejection court order to protect your purebred lineage. It would have killed me, Nathaniel. It would have killed our pup. No, Nathaniel said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, lethal register. No, the board leaked that rumor to force my hand. I never agreed to it. The NDA. The check that was my father's legal team. I was in London, securing the final permits for our Vanguard bid. When I came back and found out what they did to you, I stripped my father of his chairman title and fired the entire legal division. I lowered the poker a fraction, my mind reeling. You didn't know. I knew nothing until I felt the bond break. He confessed, falling to his knees right in front of me. This billionaire titan, the most feared alpha in Manhattan, was kneeling on the muddy floorboards of a ruined cabin. He reached out his large, shaking hands, stopping an inch from my stomach, terrified to touch without permission. I have spent millions hunting a ghost. I dismantled my own company. I would have burned the entire city to the ground just to find you. I don't want a rejection, Oliver. I want you. I want our child. The synthetic suppressants in my system couldn't fight him anymore. As his genuine, desperate pheromones washed over me, the agonizing cramps in my abdomen vanished. A profound biological peace settled over my battered body. He wasn't lying. His scent was pure, laced with absolute devotion. I am not a submissive Omega. I whispered, the poker slipping from my grip and clattering to the floor. I won't be locked in a penthouse. I won't give up my firm. I am an architect, Nathaniel. I am your equal. He finally placed his hands on my belly. A fierce kick greeted his palm, and a tear slid down Nathaniel's cheek. You are my superior, he corrected, softly looking up at me with burning reverence. You outsmarted the greatest security firms in the world. You built an empire, and you protected our pup against impossible odds. Rebuild Hayes' architectural design. Take the Vanguard project. Take whatever you want, Oliver. Just let me be yours. The surrender of an alpha is a terrifying, beautiful thing. I let out a shuddering breath and tangled my fingers in his wet hair, exposing my bruised, aching scent gland to him. Claim me, I commanded. Properly this time. With a low, rumbling growl of absolute submission, Nathaniel buried his face in my neck. His teeth sank into my flesh, not with the violence of our first encounter, but with the deep, anchoring pressure of a permanent bond. The neurological connection slammed into place, bright and blinding, knitting our fractured souls together. 3 months later, the architectural world was rocked by the greatest resurrection in corporate history. Oliver Hayes walked into the Vanguard Tower press conference, alive, radiant, and fully bonded to Nathaniel Harrington. The media dubbed it a miraculous survival. From a botched kidnapping, a cover story spun by Harrington's billions. But as I stood at the podium unveiling the final blueprints for the city's newest Skyline edition, I didn't care about the rumors. I looked down at the front row. Nathaniel sat there, holding our newborn son, a tiny bundle wrapped in cashmere, who already smelled of rain and vanilla. Nathaniel caught my eye, a proud, ferocious smile on his face. I had lost an empire only to conquer a bigger one, and this time I wasn't ruling it alone. Did Oliver make the ultimate power play by turning his worst enemy into his fiercest protector? Or was this Alpha's surrender just another calculated corporate acquisition? Let me know your theories down below. If you loved this intense Omegaverse story of survival, betrayal, and unbreakable bonds, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with your friends, so we can keep bringing you more thrilling, real-life drama.